Weekend, thousands of people will come to Dublin for the 90th anniversary commemoration of the 1916 Rising. Now, these commemorations are often viewed as contentious, and certainly for the last 30 years they've been very low-key. However, in 1966, on the 50th anniversary of the Easter Rising, the state pulled out all the stops in a week-long tribute to those who gave their lives in the cause of Irish freedom. Television was very new at the time, and for RTE it was a major challenge to cover all the Jubilee events. Roisin Niara has been digging deep in the RTE archives, and she's found some footage that has never been seen before until now here on Nationwide.
Who fears to speak out?
Unprecedented, as yet unsurpassed. The 50th anniversary of the 1916 Rising was marked with unbridled displays of republicanism. Easter week of '66 saw the largest commemoration of the Rising in the state's history.
I felt myself that the atmosphere spoke for itself. It was quite an extraordinary turnout of people, and it was a genuine celebration. It was a fiesta. There were no second thoughts. There was no question of revisionism. No one was asking the hard questions. Instead, people were luxuriating in a shared common experience of something great that had happened to their people in their time.
To be part of celebrating 1916 was hugely important to us. Emotionally, it was very important, and of course, to do it right and to get it right on the day and to project ourselves well was what it was all about.
These programs reflected the recent history, and then people who were our president and our Taoiseach now in 1966 were people who had been involved in that struggle. So that was quite exciting from the point of view of a filmmaker or a drama or a political program assessing where we had come from and where we were at now.
The opening ceremony on the 10th of April 1966 saw the largest public procession ever of the state's military personnel and equipment. As it made its way over Dublin's O'Connell Bridge to the General Post Office, the headquarters of the Rising, RTE cameras captured it all. Over the course of the week, the state broadcaster dedicated 48 hours of programming to the commemoration. But there were a number of other RTE cameras rolling away, secretly capturing the footage in colour for archive purposes only. That has never been shown before until now.
There was no colour television being transmitted in Ireland. The BBC had gone colour a couple of years beforehand, but there was a feeling, I think, in government circles that if RTE was to go colour and the cost of just going into colour, that everybody would be running out buying colour TV sets and the balance of payments. I mean, I know it's funny to think back. We were shooting in those days in black and white, so it was only a question of just loading up with colour film. Colour film in those days tended to be very, very slow. Photographers would know what I mean by slow, that the film was very slow speed, so you needed more light in which to shoot to get, reasonably good pictures. But from what I can remember, the weather wasn't too bad over that week, and it really didn't cause any problem at all.
It was more expensive to shoot in colour. The colour stock cost more money, and then it went to England, to London, to be processed. So it had to be processed there, which was also quite costly. But we knew we were recording it for the Irish people and for posterity.
It was a genuine celebration. People were out to enjoy themselves. They were out to take pride in what had occurred. But it was also drawing a line. It was saying, that's now behind us. And almost immediately afterwards, inevitably, with the outbreak of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, discussion of reintegration, national territory, all of that was played down because of the genuine fear of Irish society in the South and the Irish state in the South, that it was being challenged, and challenged in a very serious and fundamental way. The Ireland of the 1960s was a very different place to the Ireland of the 21st century, and it was different to what had gone before. We were on the cusp of major change. You still had the evidence of a preponderance of older people. You still had that shortage of young adults because emigration had drained hundreds of thousands of people. Every year they were leaving the country. You still had the visible presence of the church. Nuns and priests on the streets, and men would salute and raise their hat. It's a lost world.
I had just turned 18. In the lead-up, we had practiced very hard, and people were moved around in their various positions, and I ended up by carrying the pennant of the 40th cadet class in the very front row on the right-hand side. We rehearsed and marched and perfected the whole thing in the weeks and months before the Easter ceremonies, and all of that was hugely important to us. It was impressed upon us how important it was that we would project ourselves well, that we would certainly have the step right as we came up O'Connell Street, and these are the memories, I suppose, that I have. I was 6 months in the Defence Forces at the time, and it was the first exposure to the public, and we were very proud to do that. I had never seen as many troops gathered together in my life before. And as far as I could see back, there were troops and military hardware. And to me, it was the biggest parade at that time that probably we ever put together.
The opening of the Garden of Remembrance, which was built as a tribute to those who died for Irish freedom, was another significant event of the week. Crowds gathered outside the garden in Parnell Square as President Eamon de Valera arrived to officially open the site. Mass was held in the garden where many of the veterans of 1916 were guests of honour. Live commentary was by Brian Farrell.
Today, of course, this pool is flanked by survivors of the Rising who are here, it seems to me, in their hundreds. We've been watching them now for 10, 15, 20 minutes.
I remember the day of the opening ceremony, and the older men, many of them were on stretchers, many of them on sticks, and the young army of the cadets standing on the wall, and the young lieutenant, or maybe he was a captain, whipping out his sword for the salute. That was magic.
School children singing A Nation Once Again in College Green in Dublin on the occasion of the unveiling of the statue of the song's author, Thomas Davis. Despite the wet weather, the crowds turned out in their hundreds for the unveiling of the statue of Davis, a man who died young in 1845 but is hailed by many as having played a vital part in the birth of a strong cultural nationalism.
The unveiling by De Valera, I think, was an opportunity to see the old man, by now totally blind, and the extraordinary capacity to go on and on and on and on. It was an exceptionally long speech. It was a miserable day. It was a very, very wet day. Because the RTE was doing so much coverage, we had a crew and gear down from Belfast, I think, or maybe from Britain. And I think also that there was an English director, and he certainly didn't necessarily know his way around, so that when they said, show the flag on top of Trinity College, the cameraman didn't know where to look for it.
Former artistic director of the Abbey Theatre, Tomás McAna, now retired, has a lot to be proud of. But as he looks through photographs of a pageant he wrote and directed for Easter week '66, memories come flooding back. Ash Heidi Glórem was a huge event held outdoors in Croke Park. It chronicled the struggle for independence through theatre.
Had we done it 10 years later, we'd all have landed in jail. That's the way it is. It's as simple as that. And in fact, strange late at that time, the posters we had showed the GPO on fire and so on, and we sent some of the young people in the pageant round to put them round Dublin, and 1 or 2 of them were arrested by the guards and brought in for spreading seditious literature.
Unfortunately, there's no sound on any of the colour footage shot over this week, as it was for archive purposes only. But sound is acutely missed from this particular event.
We brought it, the idea to the public right through from 1798 with the inspiration of the Americans on the one hand and the French Revolution on the other, right through to Emmet and Emmet's moment of glory, and then on to Young Ireland and the Fenians and finally linked up with the 1916 with the volunteers and so on.
His son Ferdia, then a 10-year-old, was recruited to carry the second letter E in